Hello, I'm Adam Blair, editor at Retail Touchpoints, and I'm very excited to moderate today's No Video, No Sales. Why now's the time to give video a starring role in your digital experience. But before we dig in, we're going to go through a few quick housekeeping items. First, for everyone watching now who might be new to Retail Touchpoints, welcome. When this session's over, I encourage you to join our community. You can follow us on Twitter/X or LinkedIn, and of course, check out our great assortment of content and resources, which includes everything from breaking news to timely trend pieces and success stories, as well as detailed benchmark research reports, videos, podcasts, and more webinars like this. And to make things even easier, you can subscribe to our newsletter, which goes out 2 to 3 times per week. Today's webinar is part of our Retail Think Tank Hub, which is the ultimate destination for exploring what's next for the industry and what new opportunities your organization can capitalize on. That means Think Tank is where we'll be featuring exclusive content, interviews, and insights all summer long. And because you signed up for this webinar in the Hub, you have access to all its content anytime, anywhere. We'll be adding new content weekly, so be sure to keep visiting the Hub and keep an eye out for our Think Tank newsletter, which outlines our latest and greatest content in the Hub every other week. As some of you may know, we use On24 for our webinars, and there's a few things to call out to ensure you have a great experience with it. Right now, you should be seeing the main dashboard. You can submit your questions, which we'll go through at the end of the presentation. We'll get to as many as we can, and you can submit questions at any time during the presentation. You can even download a few resources courtesy of our sponsor, Cloudinary. And perhaps the most important thing to call out is that you can share feedback on today's webinar using the widget at the bottom. Please take a moment to do this so you can help us improve our virtual events and our standalone webinars moving forward. And if you have any follow-up questions or you just need help with your experience, just press the help icon to get further guidance. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker. Sam Brace is the Senior Director of Customer Education and Community at Cloudinary. And since joining in 2018, he's been a subject matter expert on image and video optimization, digital asset management, and content strategy for Cloudinary customers. With over 15 years of experience in developing customer education and community strategies, he leads Cloudinary's efforts, including the Cloudinary Academy, regional training, user summit programs, and online community content. Sam, please take it away.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Adam. And I am very, very excited to be talking with all of you today about video, specifically how you can be using video on your websites, your mobile applications, all the places where people are learning about your fantastic products. And video is seen as a main driver of sales, ensuring that people can see what your product looks like in a realistic setting, what it looks like with movement. And because of that, we are actively talking with you today about ways that you can bring that interactive movement experience into the absolute opportunity for conversions and increasing your return on investment. All of those websites, all of those mobile applications, it takes time, it takes effort to be able to get that done from an e-commerce perspective, making sure that we're ensuring that real experience is there, and this is going to only heighten all of that opportunity. So let's give this chance to give video a starring role in your overall digital experience. So let's move into our first topic here, which is really about why we should be thinking visual. Not necessarily just about video itself, but just why we should be thinking visual itself when we're talking about overall engagement. The first of it is increasing your overall click-through rates. Obviously, you probably have many different ways to reach out to customers. That might be through social media, it might be through email marketing, and we want to make sure when someone's learning about that brand new thing that you're getting them excited about, whether that's through content, whether that's through product imagery, also through product videography. We want to ensure that that CTR, that click-through rate, is strong, ensuring that people see excitement and are going to the right spot. Also, when we are driving this journey, we want to ensure that we're providing what we call a website conversion, making sure that the path from someone to go from click to cart to overall delivery of what they hope to have and use, especially from a retail experience, is absolutely clean and without any issues. The visuals can ensure that that path is that much shortened and sometimes even accelerated. Also, as pointed out, Social media is an absolute way to gain attention. And with many social platforms, thinking about ones that are highly focused on the visual aspects, such as Instagram, this is where you can ensure that this is where all of that video can be used, not just to show great product imagery, but create product videography and ensure that click-through rate and overall engagement is also strong in that case too. But with that said, it's also important to note that the speed to market is sometimes an issue, because you might be saying to yourself, Sam, I totally understand why I should be using video, or at least be thinking visual. But there are constraints. Sometimes it comes into being able to provide that type of work. Maybe we just don't readily have video available to us. Maybe we lack the resources to do this. Or maybe we do have the resources, but it's just taking a lot of time to be able to get this done. Thinking about photo shoots, thinking about video shoots, thinking about the time when it comes for post-production on some of these efforts. Overall, speed to market is an issue. And if we look specifically at one of these areas in this Foursquare that's on my slide here, notice that it says 92% of marketers are frustrated with the time it takes to make their ideas a reality. You probably are the person that's sitting here in today's webinar saying, I have all these great ideas to make our site better, to make our conversions stronger. But sometimes it takes a lot of work to get it done, and sometimes that can really bog down the process. That's also one of the big things we're going to be talking about here today in today's session, showing you how to speed up this process. How do you accelerate and increase the speed to the overall market? The one thing to note about this is that you want to also provide a similar experience across all of the various outputs that we've discussed. So when we talked about your website, notice I've used this almost synonymously with your mobile applications. I've also talked about things like email marketing and social media at this point. All of this is what we call an omni-channel experience, ensuring that that video, visual can be used across many different touch points. And frankly, not necessarily always in its full original form. Maybe we need to take a snippet of this and deliver that for email purposes, or maybe we need to have it where we've added some types of subtitles that are going to be moving along as a person is talking for social media purposes. Maybe it's where we need to ensure that we have only a 3-second clip of that person rotating the shoe or showing the side angle of the shirt for the PDP that you're going to be having on your pages for product display purposes. All of that is done from an omni-channel focus. So essentially, you should be thinking to yourself when we talk about omni-channel, you need to have a single source of truth where all of these images and videos happen to be, so that your team can pull them into all of these different types of resources like email, social, website, mobile. But also think about that actual video itself as an omni-channel experience, how we can have that as a single source of truth and be able to create transformed versions and derivatives and variations of that one file for all the various outputs that you need. And as you can see, there's lots of different ways to be able to do this at scale. Of course, not trying to give too much away here, but it gives you some ideas of things that you should be thinking about as we're going through this process of how do we make video the shining star of your experiences. Now, one thing to note here is that video, as we've mentioned, it's visual, it's exciting, it shows your product in a real setting. But the other thing to remember is that when we've talked about conversions, conversions are absolutely synonymous with video content, especially actionable, exciting video content. So if we look at this, more than 70% of adults in the United States, they spend 2 or more hours watching short form video on their phones. This is a medium that people are used to consuming on various devices that they use every single day. Video is definitely an area that people are getting familiar with and very comfortable with and almost expecting in the overall process of the purchasing process. Also, one thing to note is if you take that step and we say video is going to be there, notice it says 89% of buyers purchase after watching a video. That's huge. And if you can just say to yourself, okay, if we were able to take some of these metrics and apply this to our brand, our company, the work that I'm doing to tell the people about our fabulous products, wouldn't that be nice to see an increase in conversion because you took the time and effort to provide video in this type of experience? To me, this seems like an absolute must, because if we're saying this is the catalyst to more purchases, this is absolutely something that should be seen as a must to do for your website presence, especially if it's not already there. There's many reasons why these various brands, these various purchasers love video. We've highlighted many different reasons for it, but the one that I wanted to highlight on this particular slide is about trust and confidence. There are many different ways today to take a piece of content and make it look absolutely perfect for what you need it to be. That can be done through imagery. Be able to get the perfect angle, the right lighting, the drop shadow, the background. There's all these ways to get this to be absolutely pixel perfect. With video, this is also true, but it's also where there's a level of trust and confidence you have when you see it moving the way that someone would move. If you see that piece of clothing on an actual model that's moving, you can see the way that the fabric moves with them, or the way that it ultimately folds and maybe wrinkles, or maybe be able to see the way the light hits off of it to see if it's too shiny or too matte for what it needs to be. And those are things that, regardless of how you display this on an image, video takes a lot of that and provides even more trust and confidence that what they're going to buy is what they wanted to buy. And it also ensures that if they end up purchasing it, they'll probably end up loving it because they had that level of assurance to it, compared to seeing maybe only imagery of it and then getting something that they didn't necessarily want or expect. And then, of course, that means potential returns and then overall dissatisfaction with the experience. So this is ensuring that when they click, go to cart, complete the transaction, this is going to ensure that it happens in a way that is a satisfying experience for you as the retailer and the company, but also for the buyer and the purchaser. Now, when we think about video, there's a lot of different ways that video can be shot, displayed, captured. This might look similar to you because you have taken the time to do the pixel perfect video shoot, as mentioned. You're able to get high-end videography done through amazing cameras with excellent lighting, with people that are setting all of the various items up on displays to ensure that they are looking the way they should. And this takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, as seen a lot of people, and all those things together typically means a lot of money. It doesn't mean that this is wrong. It doesn't mean this is right, but this means that video is done this way. But the other thing to note here is that video is sometimes done this way, where we hole up in a tiny room and we shove as many lights in there as we possibly can to make it look bright and beautiful, but we're also kind of doing it yourself. You're not necessarily tied to the level of sophistication that was shown in our previous example, but also it's still where this is video. And the great thing to note is, as I've said with the previous example, it's not right, it's not wrong, but it's also say this isn't right or wrong. People have to get video made in many different ways. And depending on who your purchaser is, also what your company is, both are going to work. And regardless of how you're shooting that content, it's going to ensure that this content is going to shine through all the work that's going to be done to bring it into that website experience. Now, regardless of what this looks like for you, it is to state that that is the actual production of the video. Then we get into the post-production side of things. And this, once again, is the challenge of the speed to market slide that was shown. How can we accelerate that? Well, as we can see here, a lot of marketers, a lot of people that are tied to e-commerce, retailers, they are somewhat dissatisfied with how much time it takes for post-production to get things from photo shoot, video shoot, all the way to the website. How can we speed that up? And as we can see here, 58%, they're saying that the time, the skills that's needed to edit and ready videos, it is one of their top challenges. Also, they see here that the overall creation process is the biggest barrier for them to be able to do this. So they don't even have the opportunities to be able to create the video in some of the ways that we've gone and shown. And if there was a way to overcome the time, the resources, and the budget, then adoption would take place. We've talked about this in a few different ways so far, but it's good to keep this point going that even if you have all of this effort being put into the video side of things, there's still additional work that normally has to be done. And we've heard you. This is the public saying to the various world that is tied to video creation, this is tough. Now, what's important to also note with this is that it's not just tough because of the post-production side of things. It's tough because of all the workflows that sometimes are associated with this. And what that also means is if a step in the workflow is sometimes missed, it forces the marketer to have to go all the way back to step one, which is the photo shoot. As we can see here, you might have the agency or the photo studio that's creating brand content. All that has to be approved. Also, if you're going ahead and bringing all of that into internal storage, we have to ensure that that's done correctly, so that way we can be able to deliver it and stream it as needed. It might be needing to link to product information management systems, such as PIM systems or e-commerce systems, because that's where all the payment is taking place, and ensuring that it's the right image, it's the right video, it's the right SKUs that are associated with that product. Also ensuring that there's no duplication of the assets that are taking place, so that way it's always the right file. And also ensuring that all of these stakeholders that are involved in this are involved and signing off on the process. Once again, this is complicated. This is very complicated. And there's even steps here that I haven't fully highlighted here because of how complicated this can be. The main thing to note with this is if a step is missed in here, you normally have to go all the way back to square one. And that is super, super dissatisfying as a company to say we had to do this, but also is demoralizing to say, we put all this work in and look what we have to do. We have to do it again. That's tough. And what I'm telling you is it's not tough. It's something that's fixable. And that's the wonderful thing, is that you want to work with video. Statistics show this. I'm sure in your heart you're saying, Sam, by being somebody that's in this talk today, I want to use video, or at least I want to do it more if I'm not already doing it. What I'm telling you is this workflow likely is one of the reasons that you're here today, and I'm directly addressing it and showing you how to make sure that you don't have to repeat the problem over and over. This is a way that we can accelerate your overall speed to market. The other thing to note here, a lot of the times that we've talked about when we talk about the video production side of things, sometimes we have it where it's not about the time and the resources, it's about the budget, as mentioned. It can be expensive to create all of that video, put all of those people that are tied to the production side of things and the post-production side of things. We heard you. We absolutely heard you. And we still hear you. And this is why, once again, we're addressing it and showing you ways to try to cut down on some of those overall costs. So you understand it at this point. Video is important, but sometimes it's tough to do it. Let's show you some techniques, show you some ideas to be thinking about so you can start managing your video at scale. The first thing to remember here is that artificial intelligence is real. AI is real. And this is not an AI talk by any means, but it is to say that AI can be very assistive when it comes to taking that video content and bringing it into your websites and mobile applications because of something called object detection. As you can see here in this first part of the slide, this is where by bringing an image in, artificial intelligence can absolutely help us to diagnose what is in that image and detect specific objects of it. As we can see here, AI was able to determine with this image of the lady that is wearing this vest that she is wearing clothing, she has a coat on, she is a person, and also was able to even detect certain body parts that were part of this, such as her arm. The same concepts apply for video. Video is absolutely something that can be tied to artificial intelligence. And if we notice here that we have this surfer that is on a wave on the beach, it's gorgeous. And think about this, if you were some type of an active lifestyle brand, you would want to ensure that as this is going, if I'm looking at this on a portrait style or a landscape style or any orientation in between, this will ensure the most interesting object of this, which of course is the person that is surfing, stays in frame the entire time. That's the power of artificial intelligence. So we're not saying create new video content with artificial intelligence. We're saying use it for all viewports, all devices to help detect that object and ensure that it always stays in focus with the overall user and buyer of your products. One of the other things to be thinking about is, as mentioned, you probably have images, at least, of your products. And there are many ways to animate that content and turn it into video. This can be done from taking various images, concatenating them together, and creating dynamic slideshows. So that can be done as a way to easily show some movement that's associated with this. It's also where you can go ahead and take those images and bring in custom text that can come in and out very simply through the power of animated images. We've all worked with animated images in some way or shape or form as well. When we think about GIFs, or there's even more formats out there that are able to show animation in an animated style, not just GIFs or GIFs, depending on how you say it. But it is to say that there are ways to start bringing in WebMs to become WebPs, or to even have animation with AVIF files. These are all cutting edge formats that can be shown on many modern browsers. So I sometimes show this slide and we're saying, oh, but GIFs can be heavy. They've weighted down my site before. It's also to say that there are lots of different formats that are actually available to you now when it comes to the animated aspect of it. The other one that's also super interesting here is the concept of zoom and pan. And sometimes I've called this the Ken Burns effect, where you maybe watch a documentary and you see an image of a picture and it's slowly moving across, and then maybe with some narrator explaining what's happening. The same concept can actually be applied where you take that large image and you can zoom into certain parts of it, creating video-like or animated-like content, but it's still based off one base image. And you can maybe slowly zoom in on the product to create an effect that's very dramatic. It's also where you can do things like be able to use that object detection that we talked about and say, I want to focus on the sneakers, then maybe on the pants, then maybe on the shirt, and maybe on the hat. And you can have it detect those and actually do zoom pan on each one of those. So once again, one base image, but now you've highlighted 4 products and you've done it in a way that's going to capture the attention like the way a video can be done. So it's not always about creating this long form bespoke video. It can just be done with a lot of the same processes you have around photography. The other interesting thing is that you can use video as well as video to image. You have maybe videos that are there, but you want to be able to turn that into more animated content for other purposes. As shown here, this is also a way that a lot of times marketers are starting to do text-based marketing, to say, check out our new products, to maybe insiders or people that have signed up for text-based information. And you can easily take that video or that image and turn that into animated content as well. And the interesting thing about a lot of this, from the email side of things, text-based content, as I've mentioned, this is where we're seeing high click-through rates again, once you're not only providing an image with the overall email or social content or text-based content, but if you can have it where it's animated in some way, whether it's image to video or video to image, this is creating a 42% higher click-through rate when it is animated. And ultimately what then it does, and 100 overall revenue compared to if you just had showed a static image or no image at all. Super, super interesting to start thinking about this way. But the main point I want to come across, the 2 slides that I just went and showed, is that this is absolutely more than just thinking about video and delivering it to the web. It's how do you use the assets that are available to you and create momentum to them and show movement with them. This is definitely something to start thinking more and more about. One other area to think about when it comes to video is user-generated content. If you are a brand, you hopefully have people that are wearing or using your brand in their day-to-day life. As you can see, I'm wearing a shirt. I'm also wearing pants. You may not be able to see those pants on screen, but I'm wearing pants. And it would be nice to be able to maybe create a video that I could say, look at me presenting today, and look at all the great things that I'm using and wearing and representing in this as well. That can be easily done through user-generated content. I could submit this type of a video to a brand, and then they could decide to use this as they see fit because they would have access to these types of files. This can be done in more lifestyle situations. Maybe people walking down the street wearing your amazing clothing, or people that are driving down the street using your amazing car. There are so many ways to be able to highlight this through the ways that we want people to interact with our products anyway. So creating ways to incentivize that is one thing, but the ways to then capture it and deliver it, that's very possible with today's technology. And that's something you should absolutely be thinking about, is how can we be able to allow this person that is very passionate about our brand to be incentivized to take video of them wearing it, using it, enjoying it, loving it, and also being able to display that on our websites, mobile applications, social media, email marketing campaigns, and more. UGC is definitely a great way for you not to have to take on the costs of that video production either. But once again, it also adds that trust, that confidence that people have to say, this looks real, because literally somebody in the wild is using it, and now you're displaying it. One other area that's also interesting about videos is that there are ways to personalize that video. Many of you that are on today's webinar are probably representing global brands, meaning that you're selling to people that don't speak your native language. So if I was selling to only English speakers, I may not need to worry about personalization. But what if I was selling to people that live in Germany and I want to ensure that it's in German? Or maybe that I'm selling to people in any language and I'm selling in that case. Many of you represent global brands because of the e-commerce presences that you have. This allows for things like video layers to be taking place. So ensuring that through content like variables and dynamic transformations, you can ensure that that is absolutely personalized and localized to each audience. But once again, one base video that's inside of your digital asset management system, and then ensuring that it's delivered in all the different formats for that email marketing campaign with a slight change to the URLs. That's all it takes. In other cases, that might have taken literally days to create a personalized version of each thing, going into manual video editing software to do this. This can be something that took maybe 2 days and turned into maybe 20 seconds worth of work. This is very, very powerful because we want to reach buyers where they are. Video layers are a great way to do that. And there's many ways to think about video layers too, not just about localization. Maybe it's to emphasize this video that I'm showing you is now of a product that now is on sale. Maybe we want to emphasize that. Maybe it's brand new or it's exclusive to certain buyers. There's so many things you could, of course, do with text. But it is to say, this sometimes can be hard. But I promise you, with the way that technology is evolving, this is becoming very, very easy to do, and also something that you can do absolutely as a marketer without having to have a lot of technical chops with video editing software. One other thing that's interesting about video is thinking about it from the immersive side of things. Thinking about, as I've mentioned, movement, being able to see the way that the light shines on something, the way that it curves when the person is turning their body. These are all things that can be shown through video, but it's also to say that these are things that can absolutely be created through a 3D experience as well. And that goes into the concept of movement and animation with it. And sometimes all it takes is imagery to be able to create 3D content. I've heard from many vendors that go and create 3D models that all they need is a front and a back, and they can do the rest for you pretty well. And that's great to know that if you just need to see maybe 2, maybe 3 or 4, because of course you might want to have like a bottom for a shoe situation, to be able to highlight all those different parts, you can easily create this 3D content, and you can turn this into lots of different types of video. As you can see here, this is a case where maybe we just want to show a video of that purse that's rotating. Maybe it's where we actually want them to manipulate this and be able to rotate it themselves and be able to see what it would look like at the bottom of the purse or what it looks like on the underside of the handle. Those are all aspects that can be done with today's technology. And once again, it's not going to take a ton of work to do, because as long as you have base imagery of your products, and I hope you do, then a lot of these things can easily be created and then ultimately delivered to your websites with ease. Also, this is another great example of that overall zoom pan effect that I had mentioned. Notice one base image where we focus in on the overall hikers and the person that they're with. And then, as you can see, it's starting to zoom out to show all of the great photography. Thinking about this from a chance to show the backpacks, the jackets, the things that they are ultimately going to be buying, but also where could you be wearing it in an excellently well-lit, amazing background, amazing landscape. So lots of different ways to add animation, movement to things that you already likely have available to you. One area that you also should be thinking about with your images and videos is to be thinking about formats. And when we talk about video specifically, the one thing that's important to note is that you have many purchasers around the world that have the most cutting edge technology in their pockets. That's their phones. Their phones continue to be a great source for all the things that are able to be done with cutting edge video delivery, ensuring it's at the right format, because if it's at the right format, you have the ability to play with things like animation, like transparency, but also to ensure that it's loading as quickly as possible across all devices, regardless if they're using the most modern device or if they haven't upgraded their phone in a while. Same thing with their desktops or their laptops. There are ways to ensure that you're reaching the most cutting edge user, as well as those that still may be stuck using the most outdated browsers you could possibly be imagining right now. All of that can be done here. But what this shows is that you want to be thinking about formats in the sense that there is technology that allows you to essentially set it and forget it, be able to deliver at the most optimal format, regardless of what your user's browser is, and also their device. This is where you want to be leaning towards, because once again, you want to take the effort, the hard parts of video out, and also ensure that it is the most essential experience for the end purchaser. We've shown this a little bit with the surfing slide here, but remember, the one thing to also think about is with smart cropping, you want your videos to intelligently fit every device. If we take a look at this original video here, it doesn't really look great on a mobile phone that is in a portrait style when we do this with just its original version. It doesn't mean that the video is not great. It just means that the orientation and the zoom is not perfect. But if we were to say, if we need this for social media, if we need this for portrait versions, then it automatically can find the most interesting aspect of this, thanks to object detection, and ensure that it is cropped, resized, and at the appropriate zoom for that user's not only device, but that user's viewport, chosen viewport of this, whether it's landscape, portrait, or anything in between. The other part, when we talk about those formats that I mentioned earlier, you want to be thinking about from an optimization side. This is something that's tough, but those retailers that I personally work with every single day, they care about milliseconds of delivery time, ensuring that when someone clicks on their product display, when they go to their website with the thumbnails, all of that needs to load as quickly as possible. Just as soon as the human eye would be able to visualize it on a rack at a brick and mortar store, they expect that type of experience when they go to the website. This is why we need to be thinking about optimization. And formats is a big part of that. Cropping, resizing is a big part of that. Ensuring that we're only keeping what is essential, which is shown through some of the gravity that we had, like the surfer, the lady with the red dress. But ultimately, we can be making sure that everything has the right format and the right compression. An 80% reduction in file size is absolutely possible with all videos that have been tested for our examples that we're showing today. So you want to be optimizing. But of course, we want to make this easy for you, as well as your overall development teams that are tied to the website mobile delivery of your great products. And the big reason for this is that we don't want to be thinking about this in the sense that, oh, if we provide all of these videos, then that's enough. Because if they get a buffering experience, essentially the beach ball of death, as it's called here, that spinning circle or that wait until it catches up type of moment, what that ultimately does is it decreases the trust and the confidence they have in your brand because you're not showing the product in the way that it should be shown. But also, they just abandon. They're going to potentially go elsewhere. And it doesn't mean they're going to go elsewhere to buy your product. They might find something that's of a similar color or a similar shape or a similar make. And maybe that's a more ideal buying experience for them because that content didn't buffer. It made it more real for them. So everything we're talking about, optimization, about formats, this is real because if we do all of this work with video production and we get it all perfect, but this happens, this is not helping your conversion rates. If anything, it's hurting it. And then you put all of this time, this sunk effort into content that doesn't translate to conversions. That's a problem. So you have to make sure that you're thinking about how do we ensure that our video content, our moving content, our animated content, it's not buffering, it's not slowing our site down, it's not causing for a bad user experience. One of the ways to do that is to start thinking about your video content in terms of short form and long form. And when I define that term, I'm talking about content that is more than a minute or less than a minute. And sometimes when I even say short form, that can be even more short, depending on what the end purpose happens to be. But by definition, minute versus less than a minute. If your content is longer than a minute, that's great. Sometimes we need to be able to tell that story, to show that beautiful truck going through the woods and showing how it can go off-road, or showing that amazing model that's wearing your sunglasses and seeing the sun hitting against it and the reflection of that, or anything else. You want to be able to show that in a long-form piece of content. Because of that, we want to ensure that that beach ball of death, that buffering that's going to be taking place, doesn't happen. And that happens through something called adaptive bitrate streaming, which is kind of a cool term in itself. But as we can see here with my slide, this is where if we're on a fast connection, it's going to keep going. And then if for some reason our connection drops in some way to something that is less than a fast connection, it will ensure that the video automatically is able to keep playing, maybe with a slight resolution change, and then it will catch up. I'm sure many of us on today's webinar have experienced this through streaming services. When you're watching a video on a service like Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus, and you can see that it takes a second to catch up and then goes right back in, but you didn't have any delays in your overall viewing time and experience. That is also very, very possible with all of the work that you can do for your own videos through technology like adaptive bitrate streaming. So if you have long form content, you want to see these terms as synonymous to each other. If I'm long form, I'm going to use adaptive. That is absolutely should be something that you're putting into your own vernacular today. The same concept if you are talking about short form content, maybe like a short video as we can see here of this model that is showing this hooded sweatshirt. He is simply rotating around and it is taking about 5 seconds for him to do the full rotation. This is short form content. Once again, it's less than a minute, but it's considerably less than a minute. And this is what we can use for progressive downloads, meaning that there's content is short enough that the buffering would never take place. It would simply catch up in 5 seconds and would automatically keep going. And of course, it would be fully done after that 5-second period. So there's no situation where we would need to adaptively catch up to display the rest. All that would be cached and ready and then fully playing, either looped or a certain duration of plays that would take place. But once again, short form content should have some form of progressive streaming attached to it. And that is key when you're starting to think about this. The great thing with modern technology, both of these are choices that you're able to make to say, do we display this with adaptive? Do we display this progressive? Because of the use cases you have. And once again, many of us can be simply adding parameters to the URLs of your existing videos, and it automatically will make those changes for you. Many of you have product display pages. You're showing off your amazing products and you want to show images of them, but you should also think, how do I show video on them? Also, how do I show 3D content as well? So once again, how do I see that shoe from all angles? And once again, it didn't take a lot of work to be able to show the front, the back, and maybe the bottom to create that 3D model either. But what this means is that you can easily adapt all that visual media into a very helpful product display page. And one interesting thing that we have found is that the more content that you have on these product display pages that is all interlinked to showing it in its best value, you want to normally have about 6 images, maybe 2 videos that are on there. And if you've done a lot of work to be able to do this, you can easily create this content with the existing content that you have. So this is how you can do this at scale and create these amazing galleries. So that way people can swipe through, go up and down, have that like true endless experience to see all the great content that's associated with one product. And as mentioned, 6 photos, 2 videos, that is the expectation now with product listings. You can see that on the third part of this slide. It also shows here that when we are looking at this product display page, they expect the product visuals to be the #1 factor. So everything that we've been talking about, how do you do this? Remember, the reasoning for this is the visual aspect, the video aspect of what we have here. And it's also not neglecting the image aspect either. All of these are driving the purchases. They're driving the engagement. They are driving the happiness of the purchasing decision. And guess what? There's a lot of ways to get this done with the technology that I happen to know quite a bit about, happen to be the overall Senior Director of Education and Community at Cloudinary. With Cloudinary technology, it is very possible to ensure that all of those assets that you have there are optimized simply. And as it states there, we integrate with all of the tools that you likely are using today for website and mobile publishing. Whether that is a project information management system, as mentioned, we work with all of them and create custom solutions for many of them if there's, for some reason, one that we don't work with. Plus, we also work with many of the best content management systems in the world. That includes things like Contentful for that truly headless type of experience, all the way down to tried and trusted and true WordPress. All of those have integration opportunities with Cloudinary. It is also say that the wonderful thing that Cloudinary does also provide is the ability to do social variants. So that way, if you need this to be a square, if you need this to be landscape, if you need this to look slightly different for LinkedIn versus X versus TikTok versus Instagram, you can easily create those variations on the fly, and also even in ways to ensure that all are already cut up upon upload. So that way they can get to your systems as needed. And of course, our video players are super customizable to the point, as mentioned, the ability to deliver adaptive versus progressive, ensure that your players are branded to your overall experience, allowing people to slow down and speed up the content. There are ways to easily embed subtitles and captioning. There's just so much. There is so much to do here. But the key thing with this is that there is technology available to you today that can absolutely make that e-commerce experience better. And if you're saying to yourself, I want to get involved in video, but I don't know how, hopefully what this is saying to you is that there are ways to make it possible. And Cloudinary, the company that I happen to work for, because I'm representing them today, but also they are very knowledgeable about this and would love to talk to you more about what's possible with this. These are some examples of how companies have done this. Because once again, you want to probably say to yourself, okay, who actually is doing this? Well, if we look at one of the biggest brands in fashion, especially in the UK and across Europe, Paul Smith, they were able to see a 45% sales conversion by being able to just simply bring video onto their product pages. That's a pretty big lift in terms of what did you contribute to the bottom line. If we look at companies like Bleacher Report, this is, of course, tied to the ways that sports and news, entertainment is being tied into a lot of the ways that video is displayed. They were able to see sports highlights done from the floor to the website within minutes. thanks to the ability for this. And think about that. You could go from video shoot to website potentially that quickly if everything is done the way that it should be done. That's also exciting. Also, think about it from a sense of if you are in a very competitive segment, one way to make your product stand out is through great videography. And rather than being the ones that is struggling to show how great your work is, if you could take the work of video and highlight it the way that Hydro was able to do, you can absolutely be leading in the overall segment thanks to the great work you're doing by creating good content with your product imagery and videography. I'm sure you've heard of this one. Adidas is one of the biggest brands in the world. I happen to be wearing something today that is Adidas myself, and I'm sure there is at least one other person on this webinar that's in the same boat. But this is also to say that when you are trying to make sure that the production work and all the work that you're doing for product listings, product display pages, how can you ensure that it's done? As they're shown here, Adidas was able to do it in record time. There's so much to think about with video. And hopefully we've highlighted a lot of the things here. But what it is showing is that if some of these brands, some of these being, of course, emerging brands, some of these being the biggest brands in the world, they can all do something with video, and they're showing how to do it well. Over 10,000 customers trust what Cloudinary is doing with their video imagery, digital media presence when it comes to their websites, mobile applications, and overall software projects. So if you're saying, I still need to see more, there's a little bit more for you. But it is also to say here that the reason that these companies make this investment is around the return that video can provide. That's the key factor to be thinking about. It is about you. It is about your ability to drive conversions and that return on investment. Video is that catalyst. And hopefully you've seen some opportunities to do this in a bigger and brighter way. With that said, I want to thank everybody for their time before we turn it over to questions. A couple of things to note here is that if you simply go to cloudinary.com/contact, that will open up a contact us form. This immediately gets our team involved with conversations with you. And I will say we have some of the best and brightest in the industry working at Cloudinary today. So don't hesitate. Please reach out to us through that channel. Also note here, this QR code is your direct path to be able to reach me directly on LinkedIn. And I have an absolute goal to ensure that every message I receive, whether that's email, whether that's social, I answer it. So if you have a question, if you have something that's even feeling like more of an edge case or more of a technical case, I am happy to help. So please reach out to me. Reaching out to me on LinkedIn is the best way to do so. And I am happy to get that conversation going with you. So Adam, what do we have from our audience here?
Well, first of all, thanks, Sam. What a great presentation. So much detail and explained so well. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions. I think we've got time for them. The first one that came in is, can you explain how Cloudinary integrates with existing e-commerce platforms and workflows? Good question.
It is a good question. And it's something that we briefly touched upon in the sense that if you are looking at that large workflow chart that we had where we showed all of the different things that you have to be thinking about and the complexity with that, some of those systems were highlighted there. So ultimately, you are probably having a content management system, maybe multiples. I've seen many companies where they have multiple content management systems, and sometimes they're not the same company that's doing these things either. As mentioned, you might have WordPress and you might have Contentful, or you might have something that was built in-house by the engineering team. We can integrate absolutely with all of those very, very simply. So that's done through many ways where we can expose details like our media library or other areas. So that way, when you're saying I need to insert this image or this video, it's already powered by Cloudinary and also provides all of the search functionality that's tied through digital asset management into it. On top of that, as mentioned, we work very closely with product information management systems or PIM systems. So it is to say that what you have in place, it's not removing any of those layers sometimes, unless you would want to do that. But it's also to say it can absolutely be a natural player that plays very well with probably your existing systems and workflows, but just accelerating it and maybe shortening the amount of paths that have to take place. So great thing to be thinking about. But the two that I would say are most likely for people to be thinking about when it comes to how do we get the video quicker to sites is the ability to integrate closely with a content management system, and also the ability to work closely with some type of e-commerce PIM system that has been put into place.
Great. Yeah, I know from being a journalist that having multiple systems to communicate with people, both internally and externally, can be super confusing. You have to keep straight in your head. This person never answers on Slack. That one, anyway.
You're absolutely right. No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. Are there any limitations or restrictions on the types of videos that can be optimized and managed using Cloudinary?
That's a really good question. And it's also, I could see why that question was asked, because we talked about formats quite a bit. And I think it's to say that when you think about video, I think it's actually good to think about where video has been. I mean, if I remember back to when like we had VHS tapes and we were recording everything through that, and then we talked about digitizing that into certain formats. And I remember the days of like Windows XP, and we took everything through Windows Media formats. Like there's so many different things that we have when we talked about video. That like, and so essentially there's a lot of video that is available to us, but probably almost has like collective dust on it inside of a hard drive or a server somewhere. And if you think about the modern technology, of course, we're showing it the brightest formats, the ones that are most cutting edge. And you can almost see it as like the web friendly and non-web friendly, or like the old and the new, but it's almost to say anything that's old can become new. And that's wonderful power about services like technology, like Cloudinary, is that you can take all of those old files and convert them to other formats simply through a transformation. So that will ensure that that file cannot be shown on the website, maybe is not of the resolution that even needs to be on the website. With the power of formatting, also AI, to bring it up to today's standards, you can essentially knock all that collective dust off of those. So to answer your question quickly, no, there's no limitations, but also is to say, in a more long form way, start thinking about what things have had limitations to them in terms of videos and their ability to be shown today. And what could you be doing if you were able to use that older archived content in today's formats and delivery opportunities?
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Sam, again for a great presentation. And thanks to everyone out there who joined us for this Retail Think Tank webinar. If we didn't get to your question, if you typed in a question, we will pass them along to Sam, and he will answer them as soon as he can. I want to thank Cloudinary, our sponsor, and you can also access the on-demand recording of this webinar using the link that's on this slide. And if you're hungry for even more incredible information that will help you bring your next big idea to life, visit the Retail Think Tank at www.retailtouchpoints.com. We will be curating new content, resources, and insights all summer long. So thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.